We now go to a luxury resort where two reclusive tech billionaires are really hitting it off by the pool.
Oh, servant, I spilled my margarita. Could I get 2 more? Or maybe 3 more, just in case I spill another one. I'd like to have the spares on hand next time, so I don't have to wait. Please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, masseuses. That's enough. Thanks. Yeah, but move? Yeah, thank you.
Sometimes you have to be firm with them.
Yeah, it's so hard working harder than everyone else and being better than them.
It's rough. We have a rough life.
I agree totally. People look at the private jets, they look at the mega yachts, they look at
the army of servants to cater to your every whim, keep you in a cocoon of never having to do anything for yourself.
And they say, oh, you're surrounded by friends. You're always surrounded by so many people laughing at your jokes and calling you a genius. And it's
wish.
I
wish they were true friends.
And then they're all of a sudden,
are they laughing at my joke and calling me a genius because they truly feel that way? Or because they're angling for a promotion, or because they want me to invest in their company or pay their medical bills, or
no. And sometimes people will be your friend for years, decades, even from before you were rich.
Right.
And then they
run into the slightest hiccup, like a small problem that could easily be solved with a few $100,000, and instead of earning that for themselves, they come to you and they have to make it weird, and then
it makes things awkward, and it's
totally awkward.
It makes you think all that time we spent together, all those many years together of being close friends,
mean nothing to you.
Was this all in training for the big one of these days we're gonna have a medical scare and we're gonna need some money?
I'm just an ATM machine, and for the past 30 years you've just been cracking your knuckles preparing to enter in the PIN code. And
I want to be seen as more than an ATM machine. I want to be seen as a full human person. I just feel like society really gangs up on us a lot, and then you have people who are saying rich people shouldn't exist. It's like, hello, rich people shouldn't exist. What, do you want us to go into a disappearing machine, and where you're going to put us all in a camp and you're going to execute us and
bury us alive underground as our screams are slowly muffled by the dirt that you're piling on top of us? Is that what you're...
I mean, that's what I hear when you talk about...
That's what...
When you talk about increasing the capital gains inclusion rate, it sounds to me like you're sharpening a pitchfork and you're getting ready to murder me, put my head on a stake in front of the whole village. So then you hire the fence maker, you move out to the countryside,
try to get a moat or whatever,
deeper and bigger compounds, more and more defenses, always ever more paranoid, Kevlar, bulletproof glass.
All because the jealous, hysterical masses can't accept that some people just are a bit more productive. You call this a margarita? Make it again.
So I think we struggle. I think we rich struggle. We struggle a lot. I actually got a recommendation recently from my adult son. He told me that there's this great podcast called Seriously Wrong, which takes our plight as people of wealth. I don't like to say rich or billionaire. I find that offensive, but people of wealth.
Those have turned into slurs. They used to be okay, but nowadays...
But this podcast, Seriously Wrong, it totally takes our struggle seriously, and it listens, and it really listens, he said. So I think we should give it a listen. We should put it on right now. It comes on high recommendation.
Press play.
Are you serious? Just delirious? Are you hearing this?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Seriously Wrong podcast. We are your co-hosts, Shawn and Aaron, with this voice belonging to Shawn.
Hi.
That hi comes from Aaron, and welcome to the show. This week we're talking about rich people. Are they ruining everything, or do they contribute to making the world a more beautiful and joyous place? And we're just spiteful, full of resentment from our tiny, tiny pay packets. Our piddling pay packets fills us with so much anger and jealousy that we can't help but rip on the rich.
Yes. The answer is yes.
That they ruin everything, or that we're jealous?
All of the above. I mean, they kind of do a lot of things, Definitely a lot of ruining. I'm definitely jealous. I don't like my pay packet. especially compared to theirs. So they have billions and I don't. And, to be fair, I'm sure rich people have done some good things. I would never say they've never done any good things throughout history at all. But I think there's a lot that's been ruined and is being ruined, is continually ruined, continually causing problems. I would definitely say rich people ruin everything.
On the jealousy front, I mean, I guess I would, on one level, love to have $200 billion. And there's a lot of things I could think of, like what I would spend, what I would get, like some new shoes, and just like I could go through the list.
You don't need billions of dollars to get new shoes.
But it would help. I'd be
sure.
set shoes wise. I could just go
for life. Yeah,
as many shoes as I want whenever I want, any style of shoe.
For sure.
Shoes sometimes that might feel out of my reach at my current income level.
Yeah. If you're
not even fancy shoes necessarily, but I just don't get whatever shoes I want. When I'm like, I kind of feel like new shoes. Billionaires certainly have that opportunity, especially deca billionaires or hundo billionaires, which is an even more rarefied group.
I think as soon as you hit, I don't know, 10 million, you can probably get whatever shoes you want, unless they're like some weird like $1 million shoes or something.
Stupid ass shoes that no one needs.
But like, normal shoes at maximum a couple $100 for a pair. I mean, that's the most I've ever spent on shoes. Maybe I would find some amazing $1,000 shoes I would want, but probably not.
The amount of money that I make right now, which is not enough, the amount of money that I want to make is much closer to the amount of money that I make now than the amount of money that Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk makes. Like, obviously on one level, unlimited money fountain, who wouldn't be like, sure, yeah, give me the 200 billion. But like structurally, sure. When I think about what I want society to be like, I would not want to be on the advantageous side of a gap like this. Like, I read this anecdote. I'm pretty sure it was one of the heirs to Disney's fortune talking about how alienating it is to have so much money, because like when you meet people and talk to people, it creates this incentive for rich people to only hang out with other rich people, because rich people are the only people who don't have any interest in getting your money. And like, even if you have money to give, it's kind of like deflating that you think you're hitting it off with someone and they're like, yeah, so yeah, you got like so much money and I have so little. Hey, like, it's kind of crazy. It reminds me of this idea for a short film I had that would only cost $10,000, which is money I don't have. Anyways, just a thought. And then you can imagine how like you meet someone, you think you're hitting it off with them, and they're like, yeah, so like some of your money would be such a big deal to me in some form, which has got to happen within, I don't know how long I could go being friends with a billionaire without being like, yeah, so ever financed a podcast before? Like, it's just a genuine, everyone on all sides of that I sympathize with how that structurally happens. And then imagine you're a billionaire and you're like, oh, I thought I was friends with this person and now they're asking for money. And sure, it's like nothing to me, but at the same time it feels like dehumanizing, alienating. You're like
instrumental to them rather than like a person. Yeah, I think being rich dehumanizes rich people in a lot of ways. I was thinking too, it also like kind of takes away your right to be publicly wrong about things. Or like, I was thinking about how a bunch of these rich people funded a bunch of COVID misinformation or promoted it. Being wrong about COVID or being taken in by the misinformation is one thing if you're a poor nobody. It's kind of like, yeah, it's bad, but it's like you're kind of a victim in that case.
Yeah.
But if you're a billionaire and then you like have all this means and access to not just believe that, but spread that belief using all your money and whatever channels are available to you, it takes it from, people are wrong sometimes and that's okay, to being like, well, no, like you kind of have an obligation to not be wrong on this kind of stuff. Like, you being wrong on this stuff in public is killing a whole lot more people than someone's uncle being wrong about this kind of thing in public.
Yeah, it reminds me of Elon Musk, who's definitely in the process of ruining Twitter because he's rich and rich people ruin everything. But like Elon Musk's cringy social media posts, like I know people that I've like met at a party 8 years ago who I have on like my Facebook or whatever, who posted basically the same level as Elon Musk. And I would never really hate them the way that I hate Elon Musk. Elon Musk has so much power that when he's a cringy crypto fascist sharing his memes or whatever, it actually impacts the world in a way that's unfair to him. Like you're saying, it's unfair to
Yeah.
Elon. Like he should be liberated of all that wealth and power and people paying attention to him. In fact, people should be paying about as much attention to him as this random guy on my Facebook that gets maybe 2 likes on a post.
Right. Yeah. It raises the stakes of everything you do. So, in theory, if a rich person does something good, when they do something good, then, it's beneficial or whatever to a greater extent. But when they do something wrong, you're amplifying that to such a wild degree that it's kind of unfair to the individual person. It's definitely unfair to all the people that they affect with their actions. When you couple that with the fact that there's a sort of incentive structure where the people who end up becoming rich tend to be people who have certain ideological viewpoints or lack certain types of scruples about things, or maybe the process of becoming rich leads people to be more generally willing to accept certain ideological principles that can cause a whole lot of problems. It's a really bad combination, the way the society is set up to imbue so much power into these people at the same time that the process of imbuing them that power makes them worse people.
Right.
It's really, really bad.
Yeah, it's not just that rich people happen to be bad and that when they happen to be bad, it's worse than a regular person. There's like active incentives and pushes and directionality. That means that the richer you get, the more you have these moral hazards to become a bad person in various ways. Actually, if I remember correctly, there's a study that showed that upper class people or richer people disobeyed traffic laws more and were...
Why not? You get a speeding ticket. It's like, even the places where they have those wild speeding ticket, they're like, oh, it's like $300 or something. For me, a $300 speeding ticket would be almost 1/10 of my monthly income. Whereas for them, it would be like pennies from their pocket. So they're allowed to speed, basically. They're not technically allowed, but there's no punishment for them. The punishment for them is essentially the same as if you took a penny out of my pocket. Like, they wouldn't even notice $300. Whereas I would notice $300 quite a lot. So, I would get punished for that, but they wouldn't get punished for that.
That's a way that rich people ruin everything.
Yeah, it's ruining the punishment. It's like
you can't have fair... Like, it's so much harder to have fair systems where you have such a difference in how something like a fine is interpreted by someone of average income versus someone with an obscene wealth. Mm-hmm. It effectively means that Jeff Bezos can go park his car wherever he wants anytime.
Drive as fast as he wants, run through any stop signs he wants, any red lights he wants. He can do, whatever you want in terms of traffic.
Yeah, like I could potentially eat up all of my income in a month breaking traffic laws.
Right. Even if he was spending all day just breaking traffic laws for 30 days straight, it would be like nothing.
It wouldn't cover the interest on his savings.
That's when I was thinking about this topic to start with, ruining everything, I was thinking about kind of, let's get down to some of the basic aspects of society, like food, shelter, housing, education. I guess shelter and housing are the same thing. There's one other one that I was thinking of, healthcare. And they kind of ruin all of these things if you think about it. If you think about shelter, they've turned the housing market into a speculative asset bubble where the homes are treated not as housing for people to live in, but as investments for rich people to make money on, either through trading and buying and selling or becoming landlords. It generates homelessness. It causes people to have to spend insane amounts of their income on housing. If you think about healthcare, in the United States, it's pretty clear how the wealthy have ruined healthcare. If you're Jeff Bezos, you can get any healthcare you want at any time. You can have the best doctors, a team of the best doctors working around the clock to help you fix whatever you need to be fixed. If you're poor, get fucked. Try a GoFundMe. Talking about education, rich people have they continue to pile money into private schools, charter schools, pulling money out of public education. The whole system of funding public education based on property taxes means that the people who need the most money in public education get the least amount of money in public education. Rich people ruining the public education system by the way it's structured in our current society. Food, rich people have ruined food. If you think about food deserts and like food being treated again, not as something that people need to live, but as a commodity to be bought and sold. And if there's no profit to be made on like having a grocery store in a certain area, then we won't do that. Or rather than thinking about food as like, how do we design the most nutritious food and how do we get it to everybody with the best distribution system possible. Again, it's more about how do we make the most money doing this? How do we make the food that's the most addictive to people? How do we sell the most amount of food? How do we trick people into buying a larger order of fries because it ends up making us more money? Like the need to make profit and the need to rich people ruining the food distribution system. If you go to all those basic aspects of society and like what are some of the fundamental problems with them in the current society, it can all be traced to rich people and the system that supports rich people and creates rich people.
Wow, what a fun camping trip this has been.
I love getting away from it all. I love the quiet out here. You know, it's so loud.
Oh, yeah.
The cars and the traffic, sirens all the time. And here it's beautiful.
Oh, you know what I like to do when I'm camping and it gets late at night, right before I go to bed, is tell
I know exactly what you're thinking. Spooky
scary stories. Yes. I like to get myself just totally freaked out. So when I go to lie down in my sleeping bag, I'm someone's gonna come kill me or whatever. It's super fun.
Yeah.
Super fun to freak yourself out like that.
Who knows what's in the trees back there? Ooh. Could be ghosts.
Yeah, let's sit around the fire and try to spook each other.
I'm so down.
One thing that I find just absolutely terrifying is that the wealthiest 1% of the global population has amassed $42 trillion in new wealth over the past decade, which is like 34 times as much as the bottom 50% of the population combined. I mean, that level of income difference has an implicit political inequality to it, which I just find absolutely freaky.
The implications for the future of the planet, terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Almost as terrifying as the fact that 8 rich men own as much wealth as the bottom 4 billion of the population. So just 8 guys up at the top, as much as 4 billion. Yeah, if that's not a terrifying political inequality, I don't know what is.
I mean, yeah, during the acute phase of the COVID crisis, billionaires' fortunes doubled while the average person's income went down. Jeff Bezos earned $58 billion in 1 year during the COVID crisis. And if the 5 wealthiest men in the world spent $1 million a day, it would take 476 years to exhaust their combined wealth. That's not fair. And I'm getting a little freaked out just talking about it.
Something that keeps me up at night is climate change. And then I remember that the richest 1% globally emit as much carbon as the bottom 66% of humanity.
Ooh.
And that in order to get climate change under control, almost all emission reduction efforts need to come from the top half of the population by income, with the top 10% needing to cut their emissions by 90%.
Good luck causing that to happen. I mean, these people have so much political power from this income inequality. And this money goes way back. You know, half of the names on the Forbes 2020 list of wealthiest families also appeared on the list 40 years ago in 1983. A huge portion of these large pots of money are generational, long-term, powerful wealth.
Yeah, the ghosts of the past still haunting us today. That's how I think of that.
That's a scary way to put it, so very appropriate. The skeletons of the past, too.
Yeah, reanimated
the vampires.
Skeleton vampires. Yeah, absolutely. Another terrifying specter in this whole field is the specter of patriarchy, which rears its head too. It's globally men own $105 trillion more wealth than women, and women's unpaid care work subsidizes the economy by at least $10.8 trillion annually.
And the corporate world, I mean, obviously is dominated by these wealthy people as well, disproportionately men. Of the 10 biggest corporations in the world, 7 have a billionaire CEO or principal shareholder. And stock ownership is heavily skewed by class, by how much wealth one has. 93% of stocks are owned by the top 25% of the population, 84% owned by the top 10%, and 40% of stocks on Earth are owned by the top 1% of wealth holders. Absolutely frightening amount of power. And the thing that really makes this all really creepy is that a group of psychologists at the University of California published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences that found that upper-class individuals behave more unethically than lower-class individuals. And in the lab, they were more likely to demonstrate unethical decision-making tendencies, as well as lie, cheat, and take goods from others.
Ooh, spooky.
Ew.
Spooky.
I don't know. I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. I'm getting freaked out to imagine that our world is being run by unethical systems of accumulation, which push people in the direction of worse behavior.
And push more money into the hands of people who don't need it. You know, like there's a marginal utility, meaning that the less you have, the more useful it is to you. And there's research showing that earning $50,000 a year feels way better than earning $10,000, obviously. But earning $5 million a year doesn't make you much happier than earning $100,000. So there's real diminishing returns there.
On that note, maybe we should try to get to bed after.
Yeah, I'm almost too scared now to go into the tent. It'll be all alone and dark, and who knows what the billionaires are doing out there.
Yeah, we got to like rise up against them somehow. Like politically, we need to transform the way that we look at the upper limits of wealth and just
abolish them somehow or another.
Yeah,
through some legal framework.
Yeah, and the people can stick around, of course, but their social role as a billionaire or decabillionaire or centibillionaire has just got to go. There's no room for that in a reasonable society. Night, pal.
Night.
When I was trying to think of like what do rich people ruin, then I found the more salient question was like, what do rich people have no part in ruining? And the answer is almost nothing, because there's multiple layers to it. You're talking about different firms that are typically owned by the rich, or they're invested in by the rich. I think something crazy like 80% of stocks are owned by the rich. So like the stockholders that all companies are trying to optimize profits for are this large group of ultra wealthy people who have investments and expect returns on it, even if that means cutting safety standards, cutting nutrition standards, etc., basically trying to extract as much out of people. So you have like the structural issue with the ultra rich's power in the economy through private firms. Then you also have the level of what rich people spend their time and money on as individuals, and like they contribute to climate change disproportionately. For example, these like mega yachts,
private jets.
These are things that just have massive, massive environmental impacts that are personal consumptions of the rich. And then you have the structural inequality that we're talking about around parking tickets, where something that might otherwise be okay is kind of ruined by the context of some people being super rich and other people being super poor. It's one thing to say, okay, it costs $10 to go to the pool, but then that's nothing to someone who's rich, and then that might be beyond the budget of someone who's very poor. So it's like,
especially if they have like a family and like you want to bring your whole family, then it's like $50. It's like, how often can you do that?
So yeah, it frames something which should be nice, which is like a universal fair access to pools according to universal standard, becomes this toxic thing by the structure of the rich and poor existing. And then you also have the influences, the explicit influences on politics, which also factors into all these things that we're talking about, which is that when you have a lot of money, you have the power to essentially buy off politicians. And so politicians claim it doesn't influence them, and the people making donations claim that they're not doing it to influence people. But we know in aggregate that it does influence people, and that when you want to run a big political campaign, you need millions of dollars from millionaires and billionaires. Otherwise, you're shit out of luck.
Reid Hoffman joins us now. Reid, thanks for joining us. So you and other big money donors are giving money to Vice President Harris, suggesting also that she replace the head of the FTC, which impacts policy and the economy. What do you say to somebody who watches this and says, this isn't how American politics should work, rich people getting to buy levels of influence?
Well, I totally agree with not buying levels of influence. I separate my role as a donor and expert. So if you ask me as a donor, I say I'm giving money to Kamala Harris because I think she's the best future president for the U.S., for business, for a bunch of other things. If you ask me as an expert about what, kind of Lena Khan is doing and whether I think she is helping or hurting America relative to your anti-merger policies, which are, mostly to bring litigation versus, really what helps American business thrive here and overseas, then I give an expert opinion. But I think donor and expert should be kept separate. And I've never tied the two ever in any conversation anywhere I've ever had.
The claim that it doesn't influence people is so funny. Like, we should do an experiment to try that out, to see if it influences people. Elon Musk should give you and me each $50 billion,
Right.
And then, but with the explicit thing that we're only going to use it to donate it to politicians. That's all we're allowed to use this 50 bill for.
Yeah.
And we'll just see if what politicians do over the next few years changes. The ones that we donate to, we'll see if we have any influence. Let's run an experiment.
That'd be crazy.
Because
If we can get Elon to put 100 billion into the the Seriously Wrong Influence Politicians Fund,
yeah.
I think we really could have world peace around
Seriously
the corner.
PAC or whatever we call it. Yeah, the question of what do they not ruin is actually interesting. I hadn't thought of that till you said it. The first thing that came to mind was like, okay, someone just like broke up with their boyfriend or whatever, like that, you know, how did rich people ruin that? You know, that was just an interpersonal thing. And I was like, well, I mean, maybe it was just an interpersonal thing, but
Or maybe they've been watching a bunch of reality TV and it's put some weird toxic ideas in their head. And the reason that the reality TV, and maybe the reality TV is starring, you know, wealthy,
being, but or maybe part of the reason that they're unable to make things work is that they're both constantly stressed because they don't have enough money because their rich bosses don't pay them enough money.
Or maybe she broke up with him because he's spending a lot of time on Elon Musk's Twitter and has started to fall down a weirdo, like right-wing fascist wormhole. And she's like, hey, you know what? I'm not cool with this anymore. You're not the person that I started dating.
Right.
And there we find, you know, the class war detectives find the fingerprints of the rich on the murder weapon, no matter what the crime.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some breakups where you could never trace it back to rich people. It wasn't their fault.
Sometimes people grow apart, but
but a lot of the time it is. And then like, yeah, even like mundane things, sometimes it can be really ruined. I was talking to an aunt of mine semi-recently, who had purchased this little picture frame, a new tech picture frame, and was like, oh, isn't this cool? Like you can have a picture frame and it shows different pictures, and had really liked the idea, but was mostly just complaining about it because she didn't realize before she purchased it that if you don't want your picture frame to like sometimes break into advertisements rather than just showing you pictures, you actually have to have a monthly subscription to Samsung in order for your picture frame
to never show you ads.
So even something as simple as the humble picture frame, which it's weird to call this a picture frame. It's just like a tablet, I guess, with like a frame around it to look like a picture. But like, I was just like, yeah, even picture frames are being ruined by these people. They can't even get that right. And like a lot of appliances and things don't last as long as they used to. People talk about planned obsolescence. Some of it is that, some of it is just there's a lot of trying to like innovate things that don't necessarily need to be innovated, smart fridges, that type of thing. Maybe there's a use for a smart fridge someone can point out to me that's like really crucial and help somebody, and I don't know, but it seems like one of those things that's probably not that useful. I have a fridge that's like 30 years old in this old ass apartment I live in that's still fine. People have been complaining about new things not lasting as long for a really long time. But to the extent that that's true, it's the fault of rich people. A, wanting to cheap out on what they're making, or B, wanting to encourage cyclical consumption. So making things that, you know, easily break down or have parts that need to be replaced that are then difficult to get 5 years later, or maybe just have like a DRM on them and then you can't repair them yourself because you're not legally allowed to.
Yeah, I mean, on the boards of these companies, if you have a CEO who's not bringing in profit or is not bringing in increasing profit, then the board will kick them out and get someone new in. And the reason that they'll do that is because the profits go to the shareholders, which are massively disproportionately the rich and powerful, demand getting a return on their investment. And so there's an incentive to cut corners on something like a fridge so that you were replacing it every a couple of years, because that's what increases profits. So structurally, the interests of the rich are overriding the interests of the consumer to buy something that's going to be a good investment that lasts.
Yeah, and the interests of the planet to like produce fewer items that last longer and can be easily repaired with swappable items. It's also against that.
The DRM thing reminds me also of like computers, printers, where you need to like buy a subscription or special expensive ink instead of just having a simple, like, as simple as any other household appliance. It puts ink on the paper in a certain pattern, and that's what it's designed to do, and that's what you buy it for. Well, it's not quite that simple anymore, because you need to get your HP Plus account or something to keep it going. You need to buy the special adapter to make sure that the ink can go in the right way. It's all structured, again, so the CEO can turn to the board and say, look at all this great money I'm making. Aren't you glad that I'm CEO? So I shouldn't be replaced. So I get to keep my $100 million a year
pay package.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
bonus structure.
That's to impress the investors, who are disproportionately people that we would consider ultra rich.
Even when rich people do things that, sound good, you think of Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and like, oh, they've put a ton of money into vaccines, and aren't vaccines good? And yeah, vaccines are good. But then when you start looking into some of the details of that stuff, like during the COVID-19 pandemic, yeah, they were sinking a lot of money into vaccines. And they were also working against the World Health Organization, who was trying to implement a standard global knowledge pool called CTAP, where every bit of research on COVID-19 vaccines could be shared globally so that production of vaccines could be ramped up as quickly as possible, and sharing the wealth of human ideas and knowledge, and like taking on this unprecedented thing as quickly as possible. Bill Gates opposed that because we need to make money off these vaccines. We need to have patents on these vaccines. Nobody's going to innovate the vaccines if nobody's getting rich off it, or if the rich aren't getting more rich off of it. They're funding a whole bunch of vaccines. Sure, it's a good thing, but they're also contributing to, global, what people called vaccine apartheid, where rich countries got as much vaccine as they wanted and poor countries had to wait.
And something I feel like is important to kind of underline here too is that this rich people ruining everything isn't based on individual rich people sucking, although they often do. It's a structural issue. Like, the impact the rich have on our politics is structurally part of our political economic system. Structurally, the existence of the rich, and especially the ultra rich, it's harming human flourishing. Even if all the individual actors were good, and I don't think they are, but even if every individual actor was good, these structural issues would still persist. And if you subbed all of them out and you had everyone retire from our current crop of billionaires, all retired and picked their favorite child to pass on the billionaire baton to, the new crop would suck too.
Yeah, it's partially to do with what we mentioned about the process of becoming rich, or the status of being rich having certain effects on your ideology and thoughts and whatnot. And yeah, it's hard to separate the structural issues from the individuals, because the individual rich people who have the most power and wealth in society are the ones who influence the structure to continue to be the way it is. They have the most power to change it on the one hand, which they don't want to do because they want to keep their money, and they have the most power to keep it the way it is on the other hand. But like, it's definitely important to highlight the structural aspects, because it gets to the question of good billionaires. And like, yeah, you can say, sure, there's some billionaires who are better than other billionaires, or 100 millionaires who are better than other 100 millionaires. Not every one of them is an evil individual person who's setting out to do bad. But even when they are setting out to do good, I'm not saying they can never do good, they can, but they'll end up doing bad alongside of it because of the structure and the way that it's set up. And even if they individually somehow to manage to only do good in this world, they do everything exactly right, the structure overall is still harming the people at the bottom, no matter what. So it's not coming from the specific billionaires, but there's a relationship back and forth where the specific billionaires influence the system, and the system shapes the new upcoming crops of billionaires into being the types of people who will continue to support the system.
When we say that the rich are ruining everything, it is the case that we're talking about the current crop of rich people to a certain degree and in specific ways. Like, who can deny that Elon Musk ruined Twitter?
Yeah, he's made Twitter pretty bad. So bad that, like, yeah, I don't even mind calling it X now. I'm like, it's a different thing. Twitter was different. This is X. This is what he wanted to create. It's a weird side point. I was just thinking that the other day. But like, It's wild how much bad shit billionaires can do. I was looking at some Peter Thiel stuff today just before we were recording, and there's lots of bad things about Peter Thiel. He's against democracy, says it's in conflict with freedom. He is into that seasteading idea, like he wants to create a floating anarcho-capitalist utopia on the high seas where they won't be subject to regulations. But some of the creepiest shit he's done is he's like put money into multiple companies for like identifying and tracking people, like surveillance state shit. Like this company Palantir Technologies has a bunch of significant contracts with government agencies, specifically ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. While they claim that their company, the data tracking and information surveillance stuff that they're involved with, they claim that it has no effect on deportations. But The Intercept uncovered documents saying that Palantir Technology systems were mission critical to ICE, in contrast to that. And also Clearview AI, a facial recognition company that's being used to identify protesters. Like it was used in Miami to identify protesters at the George Floyd protest. It's being used all around the world. New Zealand, other countries have implemented this AI face recognition technology to help track people around the world. So he's involved in like a lot of weird tech, dystopia,
neo-reactionary kind of shit.
Yeah, like Nightmare World, Panopticon, run by AI with Peter Thiel at the helm. So like, yeah, it's not specific billionaires all the time ruining the world, but there's a lot of specific billionaires doing a lot of really world-ruining shit.
Yeah, Peter Thiel also got like blood transfusions from in a vampiric kind of way from young men.
Yeah, I just wrote vampire as a bullet point on my list.
Funded Trump and also funded JD Vance. He's like a big backer of JD Vance. I
think he like works for him or something, or they're friends or something. They're deeply connected.
Yeah, JD Vance was hired by him.
Yeah, I've heard speculation that the whole reason Vance got the nominee was because Trump wanted a more direct conduit to that Thiel money because he's, funding a lot of lawsuits right now. And I don't know, that's speculation, but it makes sense because Vance is such a horrible candidate that if the reason that he picked him was for Thiel money, that at least it's comprehensible. I don't know. But yeah, Peter Thiel sucks. Donald Trump sucks. Another billionaire who's ruined a lot of stuff.
It's interesting. Trump kind of gets a pass on the billionaire status thing. Like he gets kind of a pass on being a rich guy for some reason because there's all these like cliche worn out. I felt the same thing when George W. Bush was president. It like became too saturated to criticize him, where like the critique market is like oversaturated in a way that it's hard to be novel in it at all. So it feels like kind of weirdly futile.
It just like.
But Donald Trump is like a super like it's all rich guy shit. Everything he does is rich guy shit. Like the nativism and stuff, rich guy shit. The
only major policy he passed the whole time he was president was giving more money to rich people, massively restructuring the tax system to make sure rich people get way more money.
Yeah, anyways, I'd love to talk about Peter Thiel more in the future.
Yeah, we'll have to do the Thiel app.
We now return to Wealthy Wife Beverly Hills Glamour Lifestyle, only on Reality Network.
On the weekend.
I just took my private plane to my favorite restaurant, back in my hometown, and then flew back here. It's a lot of fossil fuels, but, it's just my comfort zone.
If you went to your childhood favorite restaurant, how do they make the food gold-plated then? Do they do the plating on site? Do they have edible diamonds?
I just brought my own glamour meal package with me. Edible diamonds, gold flakes, the works.
All I did this weekend was attend a series of runway shows in the underground city that only rich people know about. Boring. Sometimes I feel like us rich people are just completely brutalized by this system. It's so boring.
Look, our gold-plated video phone is ringing. It's Senator Racist. Hey, Senator Racist.
Senator Racist. Hello, girls. I'm just returning your call. I want to thank you for your generous donations to my campaign and your generous donations to my non-affiliated super PAC and your generous donations to my secret super PAC that only rich people know about. Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure.
No problem, sweetie. So about the tax cuts and other favors you've heavily implied that you want in return for these contributions, we're going to be moving on a full, deep tax cut package. Everything you've requested will be in the tax package. So thank you so much again for your support over the years.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. 4 more years. 4 more years to you, Senator Racist.
Yay!
What a great man.
One of the great leaders of our country. We now go to Detective Shawn and Detective Aaron as they close in on solving the big mystery.
All right, we're almost there. We've had this skeleton ghost vampire's been haunting Wrong Town all week, and we finally got him.
Let's see who this skeleton ghost vampire really is.
The corrupting influence of power and inequality mediated by wealth and income.
And I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids. So the general critique of like rich people existing, the anti-billionaire critique, what are the defenses that people raise against that critique? Like, I think we should anticipate these critiques and we should address them.
Right.
An idea that I've encountered sometimes in like online debates and stuff like that is that a focus on income inequality is wrong and that we should instead focus on alleviating poverty. And the top of the income market isn't tied to the bottom of the income market. So you can just deal with one and let the other one run free. And then we get all the wonderful advantages of having billionaires.
Yeah. Or sometimes that they are tied together, but the rising tide lift all boats thing, like the only way to raise the bottom is to just raise the top even more, like exponentially more. One of the ways they try to present this idea that it's more important to address poverty than inequality is coming up with these thought experiments that are like, what would you prefer? A society where the poorest person has $30,000 a year income and the richest person has $100 million a year, or a society where everybody's the same, but everyone only has $25,000? You know, the only way we can get everyone the same is to make it worse for everybody. But it's like, you have to use a weird thought experiment in order to get at that intuition, because I agree in an abstract sense, absolute poverty is more important than inequality. And if what they were saying was true, it would be better to have a society where everyone is better off, but some people are way more better off than a society where everyone is worse off. But when you look at the real world and how dealing with this stuff and when this argument actually gets weaponized in real world discourse, it's usually because people are talking about addressing poverty and rich people are against addressing poverty because it will lessen inequality.
Right. So they're using like a theoretical framework of poverty versus inequality to just argue straightforwardly, don't tax me, don't tax the rich. Of course, we don't want poverty to exist, but you got to figure that out without bringing us into it.
Yeah. But the way to address poverty is to get resources to people who are in poverty. Like, that's how you address poverty. And the way we get resources as a society tends to be through taxation. And the people who currently have resources to spare are rich people. So like, it's proven throughout history time and time again that we can provide things for people in poverty through social programs, and it works. So you can't say you're in favor of addressing poverty and then be against addressing poverty.
Yeah, it's not true that they're not connected. There's just a myriad ways that the lifestyles of the ultra rich impacts the lifestyles of the people who are poorest. Economies work as an integrated system where poverty is determined partially by that ratio between the spending power in different parts of the market. A good example of this is like in housing, where you have richer people bidding up the housing market, buying multiple investment properties. Another example would be in like a private healthcare system where you can outbid to move up in the line, or for that matter, like at Disney World, you have your fast pass lines for people who pay more money. That sort of thing exists everywhere, and it's a place where the power of the rich negatively impacts the non-rich. You also have the political power piece of like basically poor people are systematically disenfranchised by a political system which prioritizes and emphasizes the voices of the rich ahead of everyone else, which shapes the legislative and regulatory environment. that we live our lives in. So it affects all the products that we use, the services we access, and generally what the political horizons of our society is. And that political consensus is leading to runaway climate change, but also on a personal level, the ultra-rich contribute to climate change more than the rest of us because they're burning more oil, they're flying private planes, they're going on yachts, they're traveling more. And all of these things are negatively impacting the rest of us because of inequality, not because of poverty, but because of inequality. So structurally, limiting the upper level of the income market does benefit everyone else.
Even some of the things we were talking about earlier, like play into this, like the way that rich people get rich is by selling people crap that breaks down, making things worse, paying people as little as possible. All of the specific steps you have to take in order to get rich involve immiserating other people, either directly through paying them badly or charging them high rents, or indirectly by creating products in order to maximize profit and quarterly profit, rather than making something that will last the longest amount of time for the, like all that stuff.
Yeah, and the power of the ultra-rich to influence politicians on things like safety standards and stuff is going to impact the quality of the products because they're trying to save pennies that add up and make them $5 million instead of $4 million. So they take all this value out of the experience of the commodities of the economy or the services of the economy to enrich themselves by taking away from us. And so I think our response to that should be, not only should we set tax rates that limit people's amount of wealth and limit people's amount of income, but we also have a heavily regulated economy when it comes to labor standards, environmental standards, and so on, because this too contributes to addressing the political problem of economic inequality. The high profits and wages of the ultra-rich are ultimately paid for taking the durability of products, by worsening the environmental impact of products, by exploiting laborers. So while a strong income and wealth tax program is a necessary component of addressing inequality, it's not a sufficient component. And thinking of this whole economic problem as an interconnected thing is part of why addressing inequality is so much more meaningful than addressing poverty alone. Because we're talking about political inequality. Income inequality is political inequality.
A lot of times they want to draw a very firm distinction between political equality and economic equality, but they're inherently linked to one another because, like we've been talking about, the influence on politics that you can have if you're wealthy, the time to participate in politics that you don't have if you're in poverty. There's so many ways where in order for political equality to be a factual on the ground reality, you need more economic equality. And also ultimately what people need income for is to provide themselves for their life needs. And so if you're providing people with different levels of income, especially when it gets into insufficient levels of income, like they're saying poverty, but even if it's different in any way, why do some people deserve so much more than other people? And this is also, it kind of moves into another objection that you often get to this kind of thing, which is that rich people earned it. Rich people earned the money they had and they deserve it, so it would be really mean and unfair to take it away from them.
Yeah, how would you like it if someone took something from you, like you cook yourself dinner and then I take the dinner out of your hands and I eat it instead? Yeah. Because that's what you're proposing when you talk about having maximum wealth, maximum income.
Imagine if you spent all day on a factory line and then someone just took away most of the profit from selling those items that you made. Wow. That would be really unfair.
That makes me nauseous to imagine that could hypothetically ever happen.
I don't think our access to basic needs should be something that you have to earn. I think that should be provided to everybody no matter what. And if, some people are more productive than other people and providing them with resources in order to launch some project in collaboration with other people, I'm sure that kind of stuff can still happen, but we don't have to. That can be a group decision made by communities to invest in specific projects. And if you're the most productive whatever person and you really know how to do this, then you can do that. We can provide that opportunity to people. It doesn't have to be this thing where some people get billions of dollars and other people struggle to survive. But getting into the they earned it thing, as we were kind of alluding to, no that they didn't. Jeff Bezos didn't do $100 billion worth of work. And it's kind of almost cliche to say this at this point, because I think everybody kind of gets this, but then everybody kind of doesn't get this, because you still hear this all the time, that like people genuinely think Jeff Bezos did $100 billion worth of work, or that Elon Musk earned the right to control one of the major communication platforms that like journalists and politicians use to like exercise a unilateral takeover over the digital town square that so many of these people call it, and turn it into a weird Nazi hellhole. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, well, with all these super rich guys, most of their income comes from stocks maturing. It comes from this casino embedded in the general economy.
Right. If he had decided to sell a whole bunch of his stock before Tesla blew up, would that mean he didn't earn the money anymore, even if he did all the exact same actions other than that?
Yeah, so I guess their argument is that you're rewarded also for your risk. And it's like he, at Tesla, he bet on himself, you know,
Right.
and he made all these plays.
Yeah, being rewarded for your risk isn't the same thing as earning something. Like, when I think of earning something, it's a proportional reward for an effort put forward. Like, that's what I think of as earning.
I find that it's really kind of disgusting, the premise that anyone would still defend the concept that they're earning this money. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars of investment income as earned income in a world where there are so many people who are toiling day after day in a way that's damaging their knees and their joints and their bodies and running them over the grinder to like keep a roof over their head and feed their kids and stuff. We're talking about like the earning things spectrum.
If we earned it, like the highest paid people should be like factory line workers or something, because that's both physically taxing and mentally taxing. Like
parents of large families.
Yeah, that could be a big one. People who have to stand outside all day in the sun. That's pretty rough.
Also, I mean, if we want to...
Servers at restaurants, you have all these annoying people like mad at you and they're hungry. That's a rough one. That should be a really high paid job.
Yeah, and that's something that I think rich people really have ruined as well too, with this like the customer is always right kind of culture, like the flow of money through restaurants. The system actually incentivizes the assholes to be bigger assholes, because if you freak out, you like get free stuff and they like apologize to you to keep you around. And
right.
And the bigger money the transaction, the more important to be deferential to the freak customer.
Yeah. But yeah, no, in general, like there's a lot of income that just isn't earned in like the sense that you would typically think of earning things. It's one of those weird ways that like economics speak can obscure very important differences in things. Like all those jobs we were just listing compared to, you know, the classic example, being a landlord. You know, now not every landlord is a billionaire, and there's some very small, very nice landlords out there.
The smaller the nicer, they say.
The smallest, nicest landlords you'll ever meet. Teeny tiny little bundles of joy.
Super friendly little tiny itsy bitsy landlords.
Yeah. But even the tiniest, nicest landlords are still not earning money really in the same way that you think of other people. Just like in terms of effort put out versus reward given. That's not earning money. You're not doing work for money. You're getting money because you own something.
Yeah, I mean, we could calculate there's some amount of work that goes into collecting rent, and sometimes there's renovations and yada yada.
Oh yeah,
and like
sure.
You could, but it's definitely a stream of like unearned income. And in economics, they actually have a concept of unearned income for like land rents, land value increases, and inheritances as also another form of unearned income. And yeah, I would argue that you could figure out maybe a ratio of. Maybe there's when you have like a huge stock portfolio that's bringing you returns, like you did make a guess.
Yeah, like you're doing the work of allocating capital to the companies that are successful. This is I'm trying to steel man here. You're doing the important work of allocating capital into the right places, and you're rewarded for that work when you make the right decisions. I don't know. It's hard to describe it in a way that doesn't just sound like you're gambling, because that's more like what I think it is.
I think one of the big things to emphasize about like the current economy and unearned income is that 9 times out of 10, the thing that makes you ultra rich are the things that are not earned.
Well, yeah, because like the amount of effort you can put out in a day as a human physical body maxes out. Like we can only consume so many calories. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much actual work you can do. So if earning something is tied to how much work you put into it, there's a hard limit on that. You can say like, oh, I worked 24 hours a day for years to build this business or something. But even other people are working 8 hours a day. Even if that was somehow true and you didn't sleep or whatever, that's still only 3 times as much work as someone who's working 8 hours a day. It's not 1,000 times more work. It's not 10,000 times more work. So yeah, like in order to become obscenely wealthy, you have to do it through unearned income, in this sense of earned as being things you actually work to do specifically.
So if we want to have an earnocracy where we love and respect the earners, then what possible justification could we have for family dynasties that are passed down across centuries? Do these ultra-rich family dynasties, everyone in that family is doing proportionately thousands of times more work than regular people?
Yeah, or like your great-great-grandfather did so much work that you...
you pass it on to... You can give some leisure time to your grandchildren by stacking so much work when you're alive. Like I'm grinding for my grandkids, you know? They get to relax.
If you grind really hard, like 16 generations from now, your offspring will still be living large, but only if you work really, really, really hard, like Jeff Bezos did.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that scary and dehumanizing too, of like how much wealth can distort a dear, sweet, innocent child and that turn them into some rich fucking freak because they had too much money their whole life?
Yeah, there are 2 options there to become like a coaster, fail son kind of thing, or to like embrace it and try to like double down and make even more. Or...
Yeah, I mean, if we want to have an earnocracy, then we have to look at the different types of earned income. And I think that economic analysis strongly it has a high level of compatibility with the abolition of the rich, not as individuals, but as a structure in society.
Yeah,
if we recognize that some income is more or less earned than others, and then we structure our system appropriately to have an earnocracy, then I think you're going to end up moving in the right direction. That could be part of the picture. I think earning it isn't a fight that you super rich motherfuckers want to pick with us.
Yeah, I think even if you ask people who think rich people did earn it, how much you think people should get for different things, like, okay, like a wise investment versus a hard day's work. Like
a society that's like, we just love wise investments so much in our society.
I bet even the most ardent, low information defenders of wise investments
we live in a wise investmentocracy.
If you ask them how much someone should get for one, they would probably give you a number that would be way more reasonable than the actual reality of how much people can earn off of investing.
Yeah, if we want the rich to stop ruining everything, we need to abolish the class of the rich through a myriad of different things. Like a fun policy, I like capping inheritances and then putting all the extra inheritances into like a general inheritance. So all the poor little boys and girls get to have inheritances too.
Yeah. No, yeah, I like this idea. Universal basic inheritance for everybody.
That's funded by the inheritances that we're
taxing.
It's quite genuinely a zero-sum tax and redistribute program aimed at fairness with a recognition of what sort of income is earned, because inheritances surely aren't. Can one person earn something for another? It's kind of a strange, like great grandpappy who got the oil fortune earned so much for all of us that we still get to bask in the light of his earning. That's not how an earnocracy would be structured, I'm sorry to say.
Right, that's true. Like, you got to earn it yourself.
You know, earning, I'm so glad you brought up earning. Critics of the idea of abolishing the rich. So glad you brought up earning, because that's actually so key to our point here.
Yeah, if we had a system where there was like, you know, all these universal basics, everyone has their guaranteed minimum, where you get a basic inheritance, maybe a basic income, basic access to food and shelter, public housing, healthcare, etc. And then on top of that, there's like a little earnocracy.
Yeah, maybe different fields are structured differently, but it's always around fair principles of distributing the value together.
Yeah, let's get some common sense. Let's talk to common sense people about how much people should earn for doing what. And we'll, on top of the guaranteed
basic minimum, are you compensated
basic
for
minimum,
risk, effort,
we'll
narrowness of
factor it all
expertise?
But maybe being compensated for risk gives you like a 5x bonus rather than a 1000x bonus, as our current society. Like something that's a bit more fair based on what people would think is reasonable.
Yeah, let's just sit down and be reasonable about it and just really keep in mind the premise of earning. Earning can be our guiding star through negotiating this process.
Yeah, this isn't the type of society I typically advocate for, but as a gesture of goodwill and like meeting in the middle, I'd be happy to do an earnocracy, a true earnocracy.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we should look at it as a political priority to abolish the ultra wealthy in particular, but I think we should try to abolish some degree of richness. We need to close the window of inequality. The gap between the richest people and the poorest people should be shrunk. And I think we can use a variety of different methods to get there. I read this book called Limitarianism, which is just kind of making the theoretical argument for the author, she says that there should be a legal limit to how much money that you can have, which she said would maybe be around 10 million euros. And there's also an ethical limit on how much someone should have based on what's actually needed to live a good life. And she said that was maybe around 1 million euros. She talks a lot about decamillionaires as a particular category. Like these are very wealthy people versus people who...
Deca would be like the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Beyond 10, multiple digits at the front of million. She kind of emphasizes that once you start getting into that territory, that you're actually getting fucking crazy rich. Like that's not just having a house that was bought in the 70s and is now worth $1.5 million or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, in a sense, again, I agree that the most important thing we need to do is to address poverty. But I think it also happens to be the case that everything we know that is effective at addressing poverty involves reducing inequality. In order to create the universal basic access to goods and services that people need, housing, healthcare, universal, everything that people need, you have to pay for it in our current society. And the way that we pay for it is by taxing the wealthy. Another major benefit to that is that you are addressing not just the existence of rich people, which sure, it's distasteful seeing them out there going around.
No one wants to see that when they're walking to the bus stop.
Yeah, it's gross. You just see these like ultra wealthy people with their handbags showing it off when other people are starving. That's disgusting.
Yeah, it makes you feel shame to see that society treats people that way.
Secondhand embarrassment for them, and shame to be a part of the society that allows it.
Yeah, how do we let it get this bad?
Lost my point. What I was saying, like, sure, yeah, we But more importantly, by addressing inequality, we will be addressing all of these structural issues that the existence of the rich causes, like issues we were talking about in production, creating things that don't last as long, that hurt people, poor safety standards and regulations, certain people having outsized influence over politics in a society where everybody should have an equal say in politics, where in theory, you have a democracy where everybody is given an equal voice. That's not possible while systemically rich people continue to be granted all this extra power by means of their wealth. The benefits of getting rid of rich people isn't just the aesthetics of like, oh, it would be nice if everyone was equal or we didn't have to look at these disgusting rich people everywhere. It also just has a lot of hard benefits for society, like all these things we've been talking about.
All right, everyone, please pay attention. Yeah, we're Shawn and Aaron. We are going to be your sensitivity training captains today. We understand there's been a workplace incident. There was some unkind and inappropriate comments made to the boss by someone on the bathroom wall. We've been brought in to do a full sensitivity training using an intersectional framework against the systemic biases of the workplace. Now, we understand a lot of people, they're coming from a background of working class normativity, and I don't say this to insult anyone, but wealthophobia, fear and hatred towards people of means, POMs.
To directly address the slur that was written on the bathroom wall, I want everybody here to know that filthiness, as in someone being, quote, filthy rich, is actually an anti-POM trope.
Yeah, so we need to check our regular income privilege on this kind of thing. We have to respect the agency of people of wealth. We have to respect their voice on matters of inequality. And sometimes we have to sit down, shut up, and listen.
Means phobia is everywhere in our current society. Media representation often portrays people of means as villains, as cold, as heartless.
That's right. Mr. Burns.
Exactly. Their accomplishments are systematically devalued, especially within, the modern sort of woke communist ideology. Their accomplishments of people of means are often attributed to their workers instead, which is really just harmful. I was going to say it's a microaggression, but it's more of a full-on aggression. I would say a microaggression in this context, especially in the context of the workplace, would be more so things like asking for a raise or asking for time off when it's going to be rough on the boss, or not being a team player, not willing to go that extra mile. These are the kind of things that when you're a person of means, they really hurt.
Yeah, and that's a boundary they set.
We're not blaming any of you for not being educated on this, as you said.
We come from a society that has strong meansophobic values. Some people call it a brokeryarchy. It's the domination and rule of the broke over those who have money. And sometimes confronting your own internalized wealthism, your own anti-means bias, it causes discomfort.
Check your regular income privilege.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. That discomfort is good. Everyone in the RWIM Plus community appreciates that effort, even when we slip up. And of course, RWIM Plus stands for Rentier, Wealth Holder, Inheritor, in means holding community. And the plus, it captures people who don't fit exactly under that umbrella, but identify with it.
I want everybody, your assignment for tonight, I want when you go home to think about, how can I be a better ally to the people of wealth? What can I do as someone who, the whole world is built for me? Everything's directed to me. People just assume that you're not one of the wealthiest people in the world. That can cause you to have some blinders as to the struggles that people of means face. And so that question of allyship and what can I do is what I want to send everybody home today meditating on.
Mm-hmm. And before we do questions, I know some people always ask, how come they're allowed to say billionaire, but I'm not allowed to say billionaire? Number one, billionaire has become a slur. It's an insulting term. But some people have billions of dollars. They choose to not identify as a billionaire, and that's valid. But other people of means are taking it back, and they say, yes, I'm a billionaire, and that's how they want to take it back for them. They're allowed to say it, but no one else is.
Any questions?
I just see people calmly nodding and smiling. It looks like they really understand.
No questions. It made perfect sense. Your eyes have been opened. Yeah, thanks. We get that feedback a lot. Yeah, well, another successful training.
Yeah, I think what's really filthy isn't being rich. It's discrimination. That's what's filthy.
Yes.
So if we commit to an enormous, world historical social transformation and transition to a society without billionaires, where we close the gap between the rich and the poor and set a threshold for maximum wealth and maximum income and create a fairer society, we not only get the plum benefit of an enormous transitionary fund towards a fair, ecological, democratic society. Like, if we really, this is like the ignition key to a transition towards an ecological and democratic society. We not only get the benefit of that incredible transitionary fund, and then on an ongoing basis, there'd be various mechanisms that could churn money back into the system, but we also end the political power of these people, or curtail the political power of these people in a really fundamental way.
They can still have a voice, but it'll be the same voice as everyone else.
Yeah, so if you can end poverty, transition to an ecological and democratic society, and limit the political power of a social class which is structurally turned malevolent through various incentives and strange social arrangements. Like, I think the movement towards billionaire malevolence comes partially from like isolation and partially from incentives of power and stuff. But like, there's a general trend that it's hard to be clear-eyed about what, like, I do think that rich people, like super rich people, do live in this kind of delusional alternate reality where their day-to-day experience is so different from a regular person that they can't think clearly about human society.
Definitely.
I heard an anecdote somewhere. I think it was in this book, Mastering the Universe, that I was reading about someone who was like waited on all the time, where like these like super, super rich resorts or whatever, where like your iced tea gets spilled and like someone shows up immediately and they've got 3 different iced teas to choose from as it's being cleaned up by someone else at the same time. There's like this instant gratification, ultra rich person world, constant flow in every moment. Everything's designed around you. And like, it's almost like a metaphor for what it's like to be rich and like why you have your mind distorted by that. But there was someone who like visited a resort like that or something. And when they left, they found themselves like extremely irritated all the time by like not everything being perfectly designed to their beck and call.
Yeah, it kind of goes into that every accusation is a confession type thing. Because like so many times the argument from the rich people and their defenders is that, oh, you don't want to coddle people. If we provide people with basic universal housing or basic universal health care or universal anything, you're coddling them. You're like turning them into babies. They have to go out into the world and be forced to earn for themselves. But the true coddled babies of society, other than just, you know, the literal infants who have good parents, because that's the developmentally appropriate time to fully coddle someone, are rich people. Because like, yeah, as you're describing, like who among us, if we spill our iced tea, doesn't have to kneel down and clean it up? Everybody has to do that at least some of the time, unless you're either a rich person or an infant. These are the 2 groups of people who reliably will never have to do that. Usually I'm against the coddling argument, but I think that's just because it's like so horribly misused. There are genuinely negative effects to never letting anybody experience the negative consequences of their own actions, and just like constantly having people on their beck and call to do whatever they want at all times.
Yeah, and the appropriate response to that kind of pathetic helplessness is like pity.
Right.
I feel that way a little bit about the rich. Obviously, there's other things that I feel as well. But like, there's something so pathetic about Elon Musk.
Yeah,
that's like also, it's like he doesn't have.
It's true.
He's not grounded in the world in a way that allows him to just be normal. For me to just feel like,
yeah. When I was talking about like the aesthetic thing before, seeing rich people around, it's kind of gross. Like I think this is partially the emotional thing I was getting at. It's not just I was making a joke that it's like physically gross, because I do sometimes also just get uncomfortable seeing someone who looks really rich. Like we live in Vancouver, sometimes like downtown or something, you just like see someone who like has this super nice car or whatever. Like it's kind of weird. But like part of it, yeah, is like there's a pity to it. Like it's like it is pitiable. Like again, like
there's a type of loneliness for someone like Musk too. Has to be surrounded by all of these sycophants who are just like cheering for him all the time, and like.
But at the same time, like you can't emotionally handle people who aren't sycophants because you've been
like
you've been surrounded by them for so long that you get so angry when someone disagrees with you that you lash out at them. So like you're completely isolated except for yes men, but at the same time you've been coddled so much you can't emotionally handle the company of people who aren't yes men. It's
some Twilight Zone shit. It's like
right.
This horrible night. It's like this night they live in this waking LSD nightmare where nothing is as
transported
it seems
to the future, a desolate society where everyone's dead except you, but you have all these books and all you've ever wanted is time to read, but you just broke your reading glasses. It's kind of
it's like I've always wanted to have all the money I'd ever want so I can spend time with other people and have connections in my life and help my family and
maybe even help society along the way.
And then
monkey paw curls, you get the wealth, but having the wealth paradoxically prevents all those other things from happening.
Yeah, you just lose all your connections. No matter what you try to do for the social good, it always seems to cause harm in ways that you didn't anticipate and couldn't see.
You become a bitter, surrounded by sycophants, anarcho-capitalist ideologue trying to build a utopia on the sea so you can have unregulated dental practices or whatever Kate Willett said.
No, we shouldn't do that. We should instead abolish the ultra wealthy for their own good, for all of our good, but for their own good in particular. So let's look at inheritances. Let's look at land value increases. Let's look at all the places that are least earned. And let's use that money as a transition fund to an ecological society where political equality, including a degree of economic equality, is enshrined. I think we just got to like kind of agitate people a little bit to this possibility. I feel like it's got legs. Like who doesn't like that idea? I'm sure you could find some people like, oh, I'm going to earn $20,001 one day. So no way. Like, I'm sure there's some
there's
fraction of schmucks like that. Tons of people buy lottery tickets too. And like, it's like we're passing a motion to abolish the lottery, and someone's like, "Hey, I was just about to win that."
That's a really good metaphor for the idea, because it is really true. And the people who buy into that ideology are suckers in the same way that lottery purchasers are. And no shade to the suckers. I've spent my fair dollar on the dream of a lottery ticket.
Oh yeah, what a fun dream, a promise of a world that never comes.
3 stars and a wish.
A little tiny, a cheap little promise. Let's prey on the working man's insecurities. That's why we moved to abolish. We want to
abolish the lottery, abolish the rich, the ultra wealthy to start.
Well, that's all the time we have this week, folks. But
thanks for listening to us once again.
And let's start conversations about this. I mean, we should really have a serious conversation in society, I think, about solving inequality once and for all. And we can abolish rich people and solve a bunch of other problems at the same time. And actually, by abolishing rich people, it's just an incredible step. It makes you be like, oh, what do we do with all this money then? And then the answer is transition to an ecological and democratic society where things are distributed according to need, where society is like a large lending library, and a large portion of the world is rewilded for public benefit to live in an ecology, respect the planet, respect each other, and end the political domination of the powerful over the powerless. We'll have to get into that next time because we're out of time.
Are you serious?
And we'll just take out these headphones here at this luxury resort, being mega billionaires, having listened to the whole thing.
Wow. What a podcast.
Yeah, it made you laugh. It made you think.
Some real production value, too. That's great.
We'll have to check out if they have a Patreon.
Yeah, definitely.
Donate on the highest tier, seeing as I'm very wealthy.
Oh, look here. It says they do have a Patreon. There's bonus episodes. There's even a book club in their Discord. Maybe we could get involved in that. Learn more about these topics.
That's so cool. I mean, well, I gotta say, their arguments were in many ways challenging, but I'd say irrefutable in every way. And
yeah, I would say when they started and rich people ruin everything kind of coming on strong, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Was his son having a psychotic break when he recommended this to us?
I thought the same thing, psychotic break.
What's going on here? As I listened on, trying to keep an open mind, I got what he was talking about, and they really did show a lot of understanding of the situation we find ourselves in, the kind of a different angle from how I was thinking about it before, but a real angle. I felt, maybe it's too early to say this. Sometimes people say recency bias or just jump on things, but I want to say I'm a completely changed man forever, and I'm fully on board with all their ideas, and the only way that I can have the human connection that I so yearn for is to abolish the inequality between myself and others, to create a world where people don't have a incentive to use me as an ATM machine because I don't have anything more than they have, and they don't have an incentive to be mindless sycophants because I don't have leverage over them. Like a world of true equality is a world where I could meet people as equals and have meaningful relationships.
Yeah, and obviously we want to wait a few weeks to check for that confounder of recency bias, but I'm in the same boat as you. I really think that listening, my eyes were opened and my mouth was opened in surprise.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Not every day you hear a podcast like that. So I'm actually convinced that I'm going to be working to use my wealth to politically agitate for a total global transition away from the ultra rich.
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing I was thinking. Just giving away our wealth and becoming not rich ourselves, while it may save us from the perils of being rich, it still wouldn't eliminate the systemic issues, which I'm glad they really highlighted.
This could be kind of cool. This could be a fun...
We could at least give it a shot as a fixation for a while.
Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, what do we have to lose other than the chains of being rich?
Hey, maybe me and you should start our own podcast.
Yeah, about our experiences becoming, abolishing rich people, from rich people to abolishing richness.
We'll call it Doing the Right Thing. Rich people abolishing richness.
I like it, yeah.
Cool. It's up to us to save the world. And we're going to do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll be the heroes for everyone.
Let's be heroes.
That's all thanks to this podcast. Thanks for opening my eyes.